Trade-wise, 3/4 of what this country earns comes out of the primary sector, directly or indirectly. But they haven't really gone beyond that. There's some enormous shake-ups that could be made in primary production in this country and in terms of what we do with it. We've obviously always had the policy driver that we do as much as we can with the produce that we make. If you look at where New Zealand sits in the world scheme of things, we are a big producer of some things, but we have the capacity as a nation to feed about 40 million people worldwide tops. So for us as a country, the only thing that makes sense is to make those 40 million people the wealthiest, most discerning customers that there are. New Zealand has a 500 times multiplier advantage. We've got 4 million people, but the market that we're aiming at is the middle and the wealthy and middle classes globally, and that's about 2 billion people. There are possibilities here for a smaller advanced nation to fill little niches that it isn't economically worthwhile anybody else looking at, but which are themselves extremely valuable. In terms of not exporting logs but exporting finished timber products instead of not exporting whole milk powder, we're exporting cheeses and the high value end of it. I'll make a comparison with the wine industry because that's my background prior to irrigation, prior to politics. I spent 10 years in the wine industry. New Zealand grows a drop in the global bucket in terms of wine. The big producers are Spain, France and Italy that produce about roughly a quarter of the world's wine each. California produces about 10% and everybody else is the rest. Australia and New Zealand between us are about 2% and Australia is X number of times bigger than New Zealand. So the amount of wine that we produce is absolutely minuscule. We can't compete with the big producers in terms of volume and bulk and price, so we don't. We make the world's best Sauvignon Blanc and the world's best Pinot Noir, and it sells for $200 and $300 a bottle at the top restaurants in London, New York, Tokyo, wherever. And that's where we need to be aiming, because no one else can compete with us in terms of quality. And that's the approach that New Zealand Inc. needs to take across every aspect of primary production. Cockies, that's the thing that will need to be addressed. Cockies themselves aren't, they're sort of thinking that way, and their umbrella organisations are kind of thinking that way as well, but what's really bugging them at the moment are changes to health and safety legislation, which make it nearly impossible for them to run their farms, changes to the RMA, which make it nearly impossible for them to run their farms, and all the noise that's being made about water, access to water and charging for water at the moment, which really they're being given a number of options by different parties, none of which are any good for them. So those are the sorts of things that are giving them cause for disquiet in terms of their long-term multi-generational support for the government that they have always regarded, or the party they've always been regarded as being their party, that isn't delivering for them anymore.